Think for a moment about those times you've been listening to something. Maybe it's a lecture, a new podcast, or even just trying to follow a movie, and you feel like you're missing pieces of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
Often, that feeling boils down to one key thing: vocabulary. And that's exactly what we're diving deep into today.
That's right. We've been exploring a really useful document called Vocabulary Expansion for Listening for IELTS Preparation.
Right. And even if the IELTS isn't specifically on your radar.
Exactly. This guide is just packed with insights that are relevant for, well, anyone who wants to boost their ability to understand spoken English more effectively.
Totally agree. Consider this our focused exploration into how you can build a stronger vocabulary specifically to unlock better listening comprehension.
Mm-hmm.
Our aim in this deep dive is really to equip you with actionable strategies and introduce you to key vocabulary areas. Things that will make understanding spoken information clearer and, give you a real sense of confidence when you're listening.
And it's so fundamental, isn't it? If you're trying to learn or master any subject through listening, it could be complex instructions, audiobooks, even just participating fully in conversations.
Yeah.
A robust vocabulary is the bedrock. It really is.
Okay, let's unpack that. Why is vocabulary so central to listening? The guide really emphasizes that it's not just about knowing definitions in isolation, is it?
No, not at all. It's
Yeah.
a much more active part of the listening process for you.
So,
Well, it highlights that a good command of vocabulary is essential for so many aspects. You need it to accurately follow instructions, right?
Mm-hmm.
To understand the progression of arguments, to recognize when someone is paraphrasing something, saying it in different words.
that's a big one.
Huge. And ultimately to answer questions or just understand the core message of what you're hearing.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The guide makes a compelling point that a limited vocabulary is often the biggest barrier, like even more than grammar sometimes.
Absolutely. That's what it suggests. You might have a good grasp of grammar, you might understand sentence structure.
Right.
But if the keywords being used are unfamiliar to you, the overall meaning can just, slip away.
That's a great analogy. It's like having the grammatical scaffolding there.
Yeah?
But you're missing the crucial vocabulary bricks, so the structure doesn't give you the full picture.
Precisely. You know how the sentence is put together, but not what it's actually conveying to you.
Okay. So, to illustrate the kind of challenges you might face, the guide uses the IELTS listening test structure as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even if you're not taking that test, it gives a helpful framework for understanding how listening demands can get, more complex.
It really does. What's fascinating is how it progresses through 4 distinct sections. Each tests different aspects of comprehension.
Okay, walk us through that briefly.
Sure. Section 1 is usually a social conversation, pretty everyday stuff like booking tickets.
Right, really.
Section 2 is often a social monologue, maybe someone describing local facility, something like that.
Still fairly straightforward.
Generally, yeah. But then Section 3 moves into an academic or training-focused conversation. Often multiple speakers discussing a topic.
Okay, getting trickier.
Definitely. And the final section, Section 4, that's typically a lecture or an academic monologue. Think university-level subject matter.
Wow, yeah. You can immediately see how the language, the vocabulary, is going to become more intricate as you go through those.
Exactly. That casual chat about booking a restaurant uses very different words compared to a professor explaining, say, complex economic theory.
And that increasing difficulty really underlines why expanding your vocabulary is so essential, right?
Absolutely. To confidently navigate those later, more demanding sections. And honestly, any complex listening situation in life, you just need a broader, more nuanced understanding of language available to you.
Okay, so the guide breaks down the specific types of vocabulary that are most important for effective listening. It identifies 3 key categories. What should we be focusing on?
Right. It pinpoints 3 crucial pillars for your listening comprehension: academic vocabulary, conversational vocabulary, and instructional vocabulary.
All right, let's take a closer look at each. First up, academic vocabulary. What kind of words are we talking about here?
Well, like the name suggests, these are words common in formal academic settings, lectures, research papers, scholarly discussions.
Okay.
The guide gives some good examples like significant, meaning important, fluctuate, which means to change or vary,
Right.
hypothesis, idea you test through research,
Got it.
and evaluate, meaning to judge or calculate something's value.
Yeah, these aren't words you'd likely drop into a casual chat with friends.
Probably not.
So why is recognizing this type of vocabulary so vital for understanding more formal spoken stuff?
because these words often carry, well, significant meaning. They represent key concepts within academic fields. If you miss a word like hypothesis in a lecture,
You missed the point.
you could totally miss the foundation of the research being discussed, yeah.
Yeah.
Understanding these terms lets you follow more complex ideas and arguments in those formal settings.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, second category. Conversational vocabulary. This sounds like the everyday language we hear all the time.
Exactly. This is about understanding the natural flow of spoken English in informal situations. Casual expressions, relaxed tone, and those little filler phrases people use.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Sure, the guide highlights things like, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, hear that constantly.
Or kind of, sort of, and also actually, or basically, things people pepper into their speech.
These might seem small, but I can imagine if you're not tuned into them, they could actually make it harder to follow, or maybe even misinterpret someone.
Absolutely. These phrases often contribute to the rhythm, the naturalness of speech. Understanding that kind of might signal uncertainty, right, or that actually might introduce a slight correction or a new angle that helps you grasp the speaker's intended meaning and the overall tone much better.
Okay. And the third category you mentioned was instructional vocabulary. This sounds critical in tests, but probably applies elsewhere too.
Oh, absolutely critical. Instructional vocabulary is simply the words used in instructions, test papers, guidelines, someone giving you directions.
Like what kind of phrases?
The guide points out key ones like no more than 2 words.
The classic constraint.
Exactly. Or choose the correct letter and write the word tests you hear. Very specific commands.
You can immediately see how misunderstanding those could directly impact your outcome, whatever you're doing.
Totally. If you miss the no more than 2 words bit, you might write a perfectly correct answer but still lose points because you went over the limit.
Ouch.
So paying close attention to these seemingly small instructional words makes a huge difference in accurately doing what's asked. It's about understanding the rules of the game, basically.
Okay, so we understand the types of vocabulary that matter. Now, how do we actually build this vocabulary effectively? The guide lays out some actionable techniques.
Yes, and these are strategies anyone can weave into their learning routine. First one, contextual learning. Meaning learning new words within full sentences, not just memorizing isolated definitions. Understand the meaning and the usage.
Okay, the guide gives an example. The river has fluctuated considerably due to seasonal changes. How does learning fluctuated that way help more?
Well, you don't just learn it means changed. You see how it's used describing a specific kind of change over time, influenced by something else.
Okay.
It gives you a much richer understanding of the word and how you might actually hear it used.
Got it. Much deeper than just fluctuate. Change. Okay, next technique. Audio shadowing. Sounds active. What's involved?
It is active. You listen to authentic spoken English, a podcast, audiobook, whatever, and you try to repeat what the speaker's saying as they're saying it.
At the same time. Wow.
Yeah, mimicking their pronunciation, intonation, rhythm as closely as you can. It helps your speaking, sure, but it also strongly reinforces how vocabulary sounds and is used naturally in context. Great for listening recall.
So you're not just passively hearing, you're actively engaging your voice and brain to process and reproduce it.
Precisely. That active participation helps your brain internalize the sounds, the flow, the word combinations. It significantly improves your ability to recognize them when you hear them again.
Okay, cool. Third technique. Vocabulary mapping. I'm picturing like a mind map.
You're absolutely on the right track. It involves creating visual connections. You put a central word in the middle, and then branch out with related words. Synonyms, antonyms, related concepts, maybe example sentences. The guide uses energy as an example.
Branches out to
words like renewable, fossil fuel, solar, electricity, power grid. You see the connections visually.
I can definitely see how that visual approach would build connections in your brain, strengthen recall when you hear related terms.
Exactly. It builds a more interconnected understanding, which leads to quicker, more effective recall when you're listening live.
Nice. The guide also mentions spaced repetition. We've heard of this for other learning, right? How does it apply here?
Yes, a well-known technique. You review vocabulary at increasing intervals over time. The idea is to catch the word just as you're about to forget it.
Pushing it into long-term memory.
Right. And there are great digital tools for this, apps like Anki or Quizlet. They use algorithms to automate the scheduling, showing you words at the optimal time for review.
So it's more strategic than just crissing a list over and over.
Much more strategic, much more efficient. It focuses your effort where your brain needs it most.
Makes sense. And the final technique mentioned is dictation and transcription practice. Sounds like it forces you to really focus.
It really does. You listen to a short recording and try to write down every single word you hear.
Every
Well, maybe not every single filler, but you focus on word endings, phrasal verbs, collocations, those natural word pairings. It sharpens your ear for the details.
I imagine that's great for picking up subtle things you might otherwise miss in fast speech.
Exactly. It trains your ear to catch those finer points of pronunciation and word combinations that are crucial for full comprehension.
Okay. Now, the guide also talks about thematic vocabulary, building vocabulary around specific topics.
Yes, this allows you to develop a more targeted understanding for subjects you're likely to encounter. It gives examples for themes like education, the environment, science, and tech.
Common topics, let's explore those a bit. For education, what key vocabulary does it highlight?
It points to curriculum the subject's taught. Example, the school is updating its science curriculum.
Right.
Also, tuition, the fee paid for instruction, like tuition fees have increased significantly. And assessment, evaluating knowledge. Example, final assessment will be based on attendance and a project.
So if you're listening to discussions about schools, uni costs, how students are graded, these words are likely to pop up.
Precisely. Knowing them really helps you follow along.
What about the environment? Key terms there.
It highlights sustainable, meaning something can be maintained without harming the environment long term. Example, sustainable farming reduces environmental harm.
Important concept.
Very. And also pollution, the introduction of harmful substances, like air pollution is worse during the winter.
Again, with environmental issues being so prevalent, understanding these is crucial for following news or discussions.
Absolutely. Climate change reports, lectures on biodiversity, these are fundamental.
And finally, science and technology.
Key words there include innovation, a new idea or method. Example, this innovation reduced manufacturing costs by 30%. And data, facts, and stats collected for analysis. Example, the data shows a clear upward trend.
Yeah, with science and tech always moving, you'll hear these a lot, especially in more formal contexts.
Exactly. Understanding them lets you engage much more effectively with discussions about discoveries or new tech.
The guide also touches on navigating trickier parts of spoken English. Phrasal verbs, idioms, collocations, these can definitely be confusing.
Oh, they certainly can be. Phrasal verbs like turn up for arrive or give up come across. Their meaning often isn't obvious from the parts.
Right, and idioms.
Idioms like in hot water, meaning in trouble, or hit the books, meaning study, on the same page, meaning agree. You can't figure those out word by word.
And collocations, those word pairings.
Yeah, like make a decision, not do a decision, or heavy rain, not strong rain. Recognizing these natural pairs helps you anticipate and understand better.
So understanding all these nuances, phrasal verbs, idioms, collocations is key for really getting informal spoken English and sounding natural yourself.
Absolutely. When you hear someone turn up late or say they need to hit the books, familiarity is everything.
Now, another really important point the guide makes is about paraphrasing and synonyms, recognizing that speakers often don't use the exact words you might expect.
Yes. This is such a crucial skill. In real speech, and especially in tests, you hear synonyms and rephrased ideas way more often than exact repetitions from, say, a written question.
The guide gives a clear example. Question: what is the main benefit of this device? Audio. Its biggest advantage is how user-friendly it is. Break down the synonyms there.
Sure. So benefit in the question becomes advantage in the audio.
Okay.
Main becomes biggest.
Right.
And user-friendly is essentially expressed as easy to use. Being able to connect those related meanings, benefit, advantage, main, biggest is vital.
So it's not just about dictionary definitions, it's about being flexible and recognizing concepts expressed differently.
Precisely. It requires active listening. You're constantly looking for different ways the speaker might be phrasing the information you need.
Okay, so we're working on building vocabulary, getting better at recognizing, paraphrasing. How do we make this new vocabulary actually stick? The guide offers retention tips.
Yes, practical things you can do. One is reviewing new words just before sleep, and again right after waking up. Apparently that helps consolidate memory.
Interesting. What else?
Actively using the new words in your own speech. Don't just read or write them. Speaking them helps solidify understanding and recall.
Makes sense. Like muscle memory for your brain.
Sort of. Also, keeping a vocabulary journal, noting the word, definition, example sentence, maybe where you heard it, great for review. And surprisingly effective. Try teaching the new words to someone else. Explaining it reinforces your own understanding powerfully.
Those are all really actionable steps. Now, for ongoing improvement, the guide also lists some resources.
It does. For test prep, it mentions specific IELTS podcasts like the British Council IELTS podcast, IELTS Energy, and YouTube channels like IELTS Liz, E2 IELTS.
But useful even if not taking the test.
Often, yes. They contain general language learning content too,
Yeah.
but for broader development.
Yeah.
It recommends apps like Anki, Quizlet, BBC Learning English for interactive practice, engaging with news sites. BBC, The Guardian, NPR exposes you to real-world vocabulary in context.
Good variety.
And even watching Netflix shows with English subtitles on. Seeing the words while hearing them spoken can be very effective for vocabulary expansion.
That's a nice mix. Something for everyone there. Okay, towards the end, the guide includes a section on more advanced vocabulary. Let's touch on a few that could really elevate understanding.
Absolutely. These often appear in more complex discussions. Take alleviate. It means to reduce or lessen something negative, like pain or problems.
For example.
The new policies aim to alleviate traffic congestion. Understanding that word helps you grasp the idea of making a bad situation less severe.
Right, more precise than just reduce.
Yeah.
Another one?
Ambiguous.
Yeah.
Very useful. Means open to more than one interpretation. Unclear. Example. His instructions were so ambiguous that no one knew what to do. Recognizing it helps you understand when something isn't clear-cut.
Definitely important. How about agreement?
That would be consensus. General agreement among a group. After hours of discussion, the committee finally reached a consensus. It signals a shared decision.
Got it. And a negative one. Detrimental.
Yes, means causing harm or damage. Excessive screen time can be detrimental to children's eyesight. Helps you identify negative impacts being discussed.
And one more, maybe suggesting making things easier.
Facilitate. Means to make a process or action easier. The translator helped facilitate communication. Key word in discussions about problem solving or efficiency.
These advanced words really add depth, don't they? For listening comprehension especially.
They really do.
Yeah.
And yes, it takes effort to learn them, but the payoff in understanding complex speech is significant. Words like inevitable, viable, controversial, also in the guide add valuable layers.
Okay, so we've covered a lot today. Why vocabulary is so crucial for listening, specific types to focus on, techniques for building it, resources.
We have. And I think the main takeaway is that building listening vocabulary isn't passive. It really needs active engagement, consistent effort, using strategies like these.
Absolutely. So as you go about your day, maybe think about the last time you struggled to fully understand something you heard. Could a stronger grasp of specific vocabulary have made a difference for you then? And maybe what's one new word or perhaps one technique we talked about that you'll try to incorporate into your learning starting today?
Yeah, making it a continuous process.
Exactly. It's all about making vocabulary, building an ongoing, rewarding journey. British English. No, British accent. That's not just one thing, is it?
Oh, not at all. That's crucial. It's a whole spectrum. You've got received pronunciation or traditional BBC newsreaders, maybe?
The Queen's English, some might call it.
Sort of, yeah?
Yeah.
But then you have very different sounds, like Cockney in London, or estuary English, which is kind of a mix. And then you go north, or to Scotland, and it's completely different again. So yeah, British is definitely not monolithic.
So if I'm listening, what are some key pronunciation clues? Things that shout British.
Well, one big one, especially in less formal speech, is T-glottalization. That sound in the middle or end of words.
Like in water.
Exactly. It might become more of a wara, or better sounds like beer. It's a little catch in the throat instead of a crisp T.
Okay. I think I know what you mean.
Then there's non-roticity. Basically, dropping the R sound at the end of words unless the next word starts with a vowel.
So car becomes...
Ka. Exactly. And father is just father, but father and might have a slight linking R.
Right. And vowels. You mentioned vowel shifts.
Yeah, like in words bath, dance, grass. In many British accents, it's a longer dis sound. Think bath, not the shorter A you often hear in American English. Bath.
Got it. So pronunciation is key. What about specific words? Are there giveaways?
Oh, definitely. Vocabulary is a big flag, a large vehicle. That's a lorry, not a truck.
And where you live.
A flat, not an apartment. You eat biscuits, not cookies, and sweets, not candy.
And time off.
That's a holiday, never a vacation. Spotting these words is a really quick indicator.
Makes sense. So for someone wanting to practice recognizing British accents, what do you suggest?
Immerse yourself. Watch British TV. BBC News for more standard pronunciation, maybe.
Or dramas.
Yeah, like Downton Abbey for RP-ish sounds, or Peaky Blinders for more regional variety, though maybe tougher. Listen to UK podcasts. The British Council has good ones for learners. Focus on those vowels. Listen for the drop R's.
And the vocabulary.
And keep a list. Note down those UK-specific words as you hear them. It really helps cement them.
Let's try the sample. Speaker 1. Good morning. I'd like to book a double room for 3 nights starting this Friday. Speaker 2. Certainly. We have availability. Would you prefer a garden view or a street-facing room? Question. What type of room is the speaker interested in?
And the answer is clearly a double room for 3 nights starting Friday.
What does this example show us about the accent in this context?
Well, notice the clear articulation. In this kind of service exchange, it often leans towards a more standard, maybe RP-influenced pronunciation. The vocabulary is direct. Double room. 3 nights. It shows that often, even with an accent, the core information in these everyday IELTS scenarios is quite clear.
Okay, good point. Let's shift continents. Australia. What hits you first with an Aussie accent?
It's interesting. Native English speakers sometimes find it neutral, but for learners, those vowel sounds can be tricky. And there's often this upward inflection at the end of sentences.
Rising intonation even on statements.
Exactly. And the vowel flattening is quite distinct. The vowel in day can sound closer to die, or mate might sound a bit like might.
Right, I've heard that. That could be confusing.
It can be. And like British English, it's non-rhotic. No hard R at the end of words like car.
So the rising intonation and the flat vowels are key. What about distinct Aussie words?
Oh yeah, plenty of slang. Afternoon becomes arvo. Breakfast is often brekkie.
And the sandals?
Thongs, which means flip-flops elsewhere, of course. Candy is lollies. And a cooler box is an esky. Knowing these helps avoid blank stares.
Definitely. So how do you get your ear tuned to Australian English?
Same principle. Immersion. Watch Aussie shows. Neighbours, Home and Away are classics. MasterChef Australia is popular globally.
News. Podcasts.
Absolutely. ABC News Australia is great. Look for IELTS practice materials specifically with Australian speakers. Pay attention to that intonation. When does it rise? And focus on those vowel sounds.
Let's hear the Aussie sample. Speaker 1. G'day. I'm just ringing to ask about the course on wildlife photography you're running next month. Speaker 2. Sure thing. That starts on the 14th of May and runs every Thursday evening for 6 weeks. Question. How long does the course run?
And the answer is 6 weeks. Every Thursday evening, starting from May 14th.
What stands out there?
Well, G'day is instantly recognizable, isn't it? Very informal. But notice, despite the accent and the casual start, the key details, the duration, the start date are clear. It's about filtering for that specific info.
Right. Okay, let's head north. Canada. Often described as a mix of British and American.
Yeah, that's a fair starting point. It definitely borrows from both, but has its own unique flavor. People sometimes mistake it for American, but there are subtle differences.
Like what? What are the pronunciation giveaways for Canadian English?
The big one is Canadian raising. It affects vowels before voiceless consonants, so the oo sound in about or house.
How does it sound?
It's raised a bit. About can sound a little like a boot. House, like hoose. It's subtle, but distinctive once you notice it.
Interesting. And the R sound?
It's erotic, like American English. The R is pronounced. And often, Canadian speech is perceived as quite clearly enunciated, quite distinct.
And vocabulary, where does it lean? British, American, unique.
It's a real mashup. For a public toilet, they usually say washroom.
Not loo or restroom.
Generally washroom. Athletic shoes are often runners, not trainers or sneakers. Their dollar coin is famously the loonie.
Ah, yes, the loonie.
A winter hat is a toque. And your electricity might be called hydro. So it's a mix, plus some purely Canadian terms.
So how to get familiar with this sound?
Watch Canadian media. CBC News is a good source. Shows like Kim's Convenience or Schitt's Creek give you more casual conversation.
Radio.
CBC Radio 1, definitely.
Yeah.
Listen for that subtle out sound difference and just generally absorb the common Canadian terms.
Let's listen to the Canadian clip, Speaker 1.
Hi there. I'm calling about the community cleanup event happening this weekend in the park. Speaker 2. Yes, it's set to begin at 10 a.m. on Saturday. We'll meet by the playground entrance. Question. When does the community cleanup event begin?
Answer. At 10 a.m. on Saturday.
Observations. Pretty clear, neutral tone, wouldn't you say? The key info of the time is straightforward. While this clip doesn't have obvious Canadianisms, you'd certainly hear them in other contexts.
Right. Okay, finally, the American accent. Probably the most familiar globally.
Often, yes, thanks to movies and TV. But It's crucial to remember the U.S. is huge. American accent isn't one thing either.
Regional variations, I mean.
Big time. You've got General American, often heard on national news, then the Southern drawl, the distinct New York sound, the Midwestern accent, lots of variety.
So even with familiarity, we shouldn't assume it's all the same. What are some general characteristics?
Well, a key one is rhoticity. Like Canadian, the R sound is nearly always pronounced. Car, hard, father.
Yeah.
Intonation can vary. Some regional accents, like Midwestern, can sound a bit flatter than, say, British English. And vowels are often quite strong, maybe a bit nasal compared to RP sometimes. Think cat, man.
And vocabulary. We touched on some earlier, but key American terms.
Right. Truck, not lorry. Apartment, not flat. Elevator, not lift. Trash can, not bin. Sidewalk, not pavement. Vacation, not holiday. Knowing these pairs is super useful.
So practice tips for American English, maybe even spotting regional differences.
Watch American TV and movies. Friends, The Office are classics for conversational style. News like CNN, NBC, TED Talks are fantastic loads of American speakers.
What should listeners focus on?
Pay attention to those R sounds. Listen for common idioms. And if you're curious, YouTube is full of content showcasing regional accents. Just search for New York accent or Southern accent.
Okay, the American sample. Speaker 1. Hey, do you know if the student orientation is still happening this Friday? Speaker 2. Yeah, it starts at 2 p.m. in the Student Center auditorium. Question. Where is the student orientation taking place?
Answer. In the Student Center
I
auditorium.
see points here.
Notice the casual, hey. And again, the task is direct. Identify the location. Even with informal language, the necessary detail is right there.
Okay, so we've toured the big four. What are some general strategies listeners can use to just get better at handling all these accents in the test?
Active, targeted practice is everything. Don't just passively listen. Try short daily clips of each accent. First goal. Just identify it. British, Aussie, Canadian, American.
Before even worrying about the content.
Exactly. Train your ear for the overall sound first. Then try mimicking short phrases. It really helps connect the sound to how it feels to say it.
And when you're actually listening in the test or practicing, any specific techniques?
Focus hard on keywords. Nouns, verbs, adjectives carrying the main meaning. Listen especially for numbers, dates, times, and signal words, however. Firstly, in contrast, they guide you.
What about shadowing?
Oh, shadowing is brilliant. Repeating what you hear almost immediately. It forces you to catch the rhythm, the intonation, not just words. And use transcripts with audio sometimes to link sound and spelling, but don't rely on them forever.
Good point. And note-taking is vital in IELTS listening. How do accents affect that?
You need speed. Develop abbreviations, symbols that work for you. Leave space. Don't cram notes together. You might need to add something later.
What if you hear a word but aren't sure of the spelling because of the accent?
Write it phonetically.
Yeah.
How it sounds to you. Don't get stuck on perfect spelling. Getting something down is better than nothing.
Right. Now, what about common mistakes people make with accents? How can we avoid them?
A big one is mishearing similar sounding words. Think can versus can't. The vowel sound differs subtly across accents. Or minimal pairs like ship and sheep. Practice these specific sound contrasts.
Makes sense. What else?
Accent bias. Expecting only, say, British English, then getting thrown by an Australian speaker. The fix. Deliberate exposure. Make sure your practice includes all four regularly. Rotate them.
And intonation. We talked about the Aussie rising tone.
Yes. Misinterpreting intonation is common. Thinking a statement is a question or missing sarcasm or emphasis. Again, shadowing helps train your ear for these rises and falls, the musicality of the accent.
And the danger of always using subtitles or transcripts.
It becomes a crutch. You must practice listening without visual aids. Start short, maybe 30 seconds, then build up. Train your ear to do the work on its own.
Okay, let's quickly map this onto the IELTS test structure. 4 sections. Where do these accents typically pop up?
Okay, section 1. Usually an everyday chat, 2 speakers. Could be any accent, but British and Australian are pretty common here.
Section 2.
A monologue, social context, often British, Australian, or Canadian.
Section 3 is the academic discussion, right?
Yes, usually 2 to 4 speakers. This is where you most likely get a mix, maybe American and British, or Australian and Canadian speakers discussing something.
And section 4, the lecture.
Typically a monologue, academic lecture, usually British or American here. But remember, any accent could appear in any section. This is just a general tendency.
Good to know. Any quick tips for each section bearing accents in mind?
Section 1. Focus like a laser on names, numbers, dates, times. The answers are usually specific facts.
Section 2. Get the gist. What's the main topic? Speaker's attitude. Setting.
Section 3. Track who's speaking. Listen for agreement, disagreement, different viewpoints, especially with mixed accents.
Section 4. Tune into the lecture flow. Academic vocabulary is key. Listen for signposting language. Firstly, to conclude.
And just be ready for the different rhythms and speeds each accent might have.
Right. Let's quickly revisit those key vocabulary differences one last time, just to reinforce them, sure.
Trash, US versus rubbish, UK is versus garbage.
Apartment, UScan versus flat, UK versus maybe unit, AUS.
Trunk, UScan versus boot, UK for a car.
Restroom, bathroom, US versus washroom can versus toilet lube.
Definitely. Okay, as we wrap up, what's the final word? The key takeaway for listeners wanting to master these accents for IELTS.
It really boils down to consistent, active, varied practice. Use the strategies, find diverse materials, don't just passively listen, engage with it.
And maybe change your mindset. Absolutely. See this variety not as a hurdle, but as an opportunity. It makes you a better, more flexible listener overall, not just for the test. Embrace it. It's a skill you can develop.
That's a great way to put it. So, to recap, recognizing and understanding British, Australian, Canadian, and American accents is vital for IELTS listening. We've hit the key sound differences, vocabulary variations, and given you practical strategies.
Exactly. The tools are there. Now it's about applying them consistently in your preparation. You can do this.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. As you get better at understanding these accents for the test, how does that also change how you connect with people globally? How does it enrich those real-world conversations? What other tiny clues in spoken English might open up even more understanding?
Our mission here is to break down these common mistakes, the ones even fluent speakers make, across all the sections: listening, reading, writing, and speaking.
And we won't just point fingers at the problem.
No way. We'll give you practical ways to fix them, with real example. It's like an insider guide to dodging those score killers. We'll go section by section.
Actionable stuff you can use straight away. And it's worth saying again, right, a high IELTS score isn't purely about how great your English is. It's about playing the game, understanding the test rules, and using clever strategies. So, shall we jump in?
Let's do it. Let's start with listening. Now, you might think, listening? I'm good at listening. But the IELTS listening, it has these, cleverly designed traps. And one of the biggest, most common mistakes, not using that time beforehand to read the questions, before the audio even starts.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Even advanced folks sometimes just dive straight into listening. They figure, my comprehension's good, I'll catch it.
Yeah, but it's like going exploring without a map.
Exactly. You haven't prepped your brain. You don't know what specific details you're listening for.
So the fix is simple but crucial. Use that reading time really well. Before the audio plays, look at the questions, underlying keywords, maybe even try and guess what kind of answer you're listening for: a date, a name, a place.
It sharpens your focus massively. So are you really using that time? Like if you see a question, what time is the train scheduled to arrive? Boom, your brain should instantly flag time references.
Right, you're tuning your ears specifically for that. Gives you a head start.
Definitely. Okay, another listening trap. Distractors.
Ah, yes, the false leads.
They're put there deliberately, to check if you're really following along or just grabbing the first plausible thing you hear.
It tests if you can catch corrections or changes.
It's a core part of how they assess, yeah. They might say something that sounds right, but then correct it. Understanding this pattern is key.
So the skill is training your ear to catch those little shifts. Listen for words like actually, or but, or those often signal the real answers coming up.
Yeah, like the meeting was supposed to be at 10 a.m., you hear 10 a.m., but actually it's been moved to 11:30 a.m.
If you stopped listening after 10 a.m., you'd get it wrong.
Exactly. You need to catch the but actually. Recognizing those patterns, changes in time, location, often introduced by however, instead, no wait. That's a huge advantage.
Okay, moving on. Another one that trips people up, surprisingly often, even advanced learners: spelling and grammar in the answers you write down.
Seems basic, right? But if you hear the answer perfectly, say library, but you spell it library.
It's marked wrong. Simple as that.
It's such a frustrating way to lose points, especially if your listening was spot on.
Absolutely. So the solution, you've got to consciously review spellings of common words, names, places, numbers that pop up in IELTS.
And a great pro tip, practice transcribing, like dictation exercises.
Yeah, listen to short clips, maybe from IELTS samples, and just write down exactly what you hear. It drills the spelling and helps you capture words quickly and accurately.
And it's not just basic spelling. You also have to be super careful about the form of the word or the number of words, especially with those instructions.
Oh yeah, those dreaded instructions. No more than 2 words and/or a number. You have to follow those exactly. Go over the limit, use the wrong form.
And even if the info is right, the answer's marked wrong. It's strict.
For instance, if the answer is clearly a 5-day trip and the instruction is no more than 2 words and/or a number.
And you write 5 days trip, that's 3 words, incorrect. Or maybe the form is wrong, grammatically. Needs to be 5-day.
Seems like a tiny detail, but it costs points. Okay, let's switch gears. Reading module. Time is the enemy here, often. And the biggest time drain we see, reading every single word of the passage.
It feels like the right thing to do, doesn't it? Especially if you're used to detailed academic reading.
Sure.
But in IELTS reading, with the clock ticking, it's not efficient. You'll run out of time, guaranteed.
So you need techniques. Skimming and scanning. That's the mantra.
Skim first, get the gist, the overall structure, then look at the questions and scan the text specifically for the keywords or information related to that question.
It helps you find the relevant bits much faster. If the question asks about, say, a specific year or a scientist's name,
You scan for that year, that name. You don't need to read every sentence leading up to it. It's targeted searching. Saves so much time.
definitely. Now, another reading hurdle. Those true, false not given questions. People get really mixed up with these.
They do, and it requires real precision. You have to base your answer only on what's in the text. Not your own knowledge, not what seems logical, just the text.
Let's break it down. True means the statement matches the text directly.
Explicitly stated.
False means the statement contradicts the text. The text says the opposite.
Directly contradicts, yeah.
And not given. This is the tricky one. It means the information just isn't there, you can't confirm it, and you can't deny it based only on the passage.
You can infer. If the passage says the museum opens at 9 a.m. on weekends, and the statement is the museum opens at 9 a.m. every day.
That's false, because the passage specifies weekends, contradicting every day.
Exactly. If the statement was the museum closes at 5 p.m., and the passage doesn't mention closing time.
Not given. Simple as that, but easy to overthink.
Very easy. Okay, next point for reading. Synonyms and paraphrasing. This is huge.
Absolutely essential. IELTS almost never uses the exact same words in the question and the passage. They test your vocabulary range.
It's a core design feature. They want to see if you understand the meaning, even when it's dressed up in different words. If you only scan for exact matches,
You'll miss a lot of answers. It's not just about knowing words, it's about recognizing concepts phrased differently.
So you've got to actively train yourself to spot these, expand your vocabulary, sure, but also practice seeing how ideas are rephrased. Look for different grammatical structures conveying the same thing.
Like, the question might ask about the causes of language extinction.
And the passage might talk about how minority languages are dying out due to lack of use. You need to connect extinction with dying out.
Or causes with due to. Seeing those links is crucial.
Look for things like verbs changed to nouns or adjectives to adverbs, common paraphrasing tricks.
Right. And one last con. Reading point sounds simple, but happens all the time. Messing up when you transfer your answers to the answer sheet.
The pressure gets to you. Rushing at the end. It's easy to misspell something, go over the word limit, or even just write the answer in the wrong numbered box.
Nightmare.
Such easily avoidable lost marks.
The fix. Discipline. Leave a few minutes at the very end just for checking the transfer. Spelling's correct. Word limits obeyed. Answers in the right boxes. Double check everything.
Meticulously, it's worth it. Okay, shall we move on to writing? Often the biggest mountain to climb for high scores.
Definitely a common struggle. And a major mistake here is not actually answering all parts of the question.
Task achievement, right. It's a key scoring criterion. If the prompt asks you to do 3 things and you only do 2.
Your score is capped instantly, no matter how beautiful your English is.
So you have to break down the prompt carefully. If it says, discuss both views and give your opinion, you absolutely must discuss view A, discuss view B, and state and justify your own opinion. All 3 parts need to be clear.
No shortcuts. Another weak spot we see, even in good writers. Weak thesis statements and topic sentences.
These are like the skeleton of your essay, aren't they? They hold it together, give it structure and flow.
A good thesis statement, usually in the intro, tells the reader exactly what your essay will argue or cover. It's the roadmap.
And strong topic sentences. At the start of each body paragraph, signal the main point of that paragraph. They make it coherent, easy to follow.
But what makes a thesis strong for IELTS? It's not just stating the topic, is it?
No, exactly. It needs to present your actual position or the main argument you're going to develop in relation to the question.
So instead of just saying this essay is about the pros and cons of tourism, a better thesis might be:
While tourism can bring economic benefits, its negative environmental and cultural impacts often outweigh the advantages, suggesting a need for stricter regulation. C. Takes a clear stance.
Got it. Clear position. Okay. Vocabulary. A classic issue is repetition.
Yep. Affects your lexical resource score, even if your grammar's perfect, using important 10 times.
Makes the writing feel flat, less sophisticated, limits your score.
So the solution is active paraphrasing and using synonyms. Build your vocabulary actively. Instead of just important, think.
Significant, crucial, vital, essential.
Exactly. Or for problem, try.
Issue, challenge, drawback, difficulty, concern. Having those alternatives ready makes a big difference.
It does. Now, interestingly, sometimes advanced learners go too far the other way. They try too hard to sound academic.
Right, using overly complex sentences or too much passive voice.
And the risk there is that the writing becomes unclear, maybe even grammatically messy, while showing grammatical range is good.
Clarity is king. You need a mix of sentence structures, simple and complex, but the priority is always clear communication. Don't sacrifice clarity for complexity.
Well said. And finally, for writing, time management. Huge issue.
Especially the balance between task 1 and task 2.
People often spend way too long on task 1, maybe because it seems more concrete, describing a graph or chart.
But task 2 is worth double the marks. You need more time for it.
The standard advice is solid, roughly 20 minutes for task 1, 40 minutes for task 2.
And crucially, plan first. Just a few minutes outlining your main points for each task before you start writing properly.
Saves you time in the long run, stops you from waffling, keeps it structured. Vital.
Okay, let's tackle the speaking module. Pitfall number 1, memorized answers.
Oh, examiners can spot these a mile off. They sound unnatural, robotic.
It completely defeats the purpose, which is to show you can communicate spontaneously.
Exactly. So don't memorize scripts. Practice talking about common topics, sure, but improvise your actual answers. Sound like you're actually thinking and talking.
Instead of some stiff opening like, regarding the question of my preferred leisure activities.
Try something natural like, oh, that's a good question. Well, when I have free time, I really enjoy. More conversational.
Much better. Mistake number 2, short, underdeveloped answers, especially in parts 2 and 3.
Yeah, just giving one-word answers or really brief sentences. It doesn't give the examiner much to assess you on.
Right. You're not showing off your fluency, your vocabulary range, your ability to link ideas.
All crucial for the score.
So a good technique here is the PE strategy. Point, explain, example.
Works really well. Make your point clearly. Explain why or give more detail, then give a specific example to illustrate it.
So if they ask about your favorite music, don't just say rock music.
No. Say why I love the energy of rock music. The guitar riffs really appeal to me. Point, explanation.
And then an example.
For instance, I went to see band name live last year, and the atmosphere was just incredible. Point, explain, example, much fuller answer.
Makes sense.
Oh.
Okay, next, pronunciation and intonation.
This can really affect how clear you are, even if your grammar and vocab are strong.
If the examiner struggles to understand you because of pronunciation issues or flat, unnatural intonation,
your score will suffer. Communication breaks down.
So how to improve?
Recording yourself is brilliant. Listen back critically. Are you stressing the right words? Is your intonation going up and down naturally?
Use online tools too, maybe.
Definitely. Like Youglish, where you can hear words used in context by native speakers. Or Forvo for individual word pronunciation. Great resources.
Good tips. Another speaking habit to watch. Overuse of fillers.
We all use fillers sometimes. It's natural.
But too many of them really break up the flow, don't they? Makes you sound hesitant, less fluent.
Exactly. So the trick is to try and replace those empty fillers with slightly more meaningful thinking phrases.
Like what?
Like, that's an interesting point, let me think. Or, well, off the top of my head, I'd say. Or, I haven't really considered that before, but perhaps. Gives you a moment to think without just saying,
Buys you time more elegantly. Okay, and one last speaking point. Sometimes advanced learners hold back on using complex grammar.
Maybe they play it safe, afraid of making mistakes.
Could be. But the examiners want to see a range. If you only use simple sentences and basic tenses, you won't score highly on grammatical range and accuracy.
So don't be afraid to try. Use conditionals where appropriate. If I had more time, I would. Use comparatives. It's much harder then. Use relative clauses. The person who helped me. Show off what you can do.
Within reason, naturally fitting the conversation.
Of course, don't force it unnaturally. Okay, so we've covered the 4 modules. What about general mistakes, things that apply across the board?
Good point. The first one seems blindingly obvious, but it happens. Ignoring instructions.
Basic, but critical. Word limits, answer formats like writing in capitals when required time limits for sections. You have to read and follow the instructions precisely.
Overlooking these details can cost easy marks. Always read the instructions first. Always.
Second, big general error, not practicing under proper exam conditions.
Huge difference between knowing English and performing under pressure, right?
Absolutely. Doing practice exercises casually is one thing. Doing a full timed mock test, simulating the real exam environment, that's totally different. It builds stamina, shows you how to manage time under stress.
So you need to do full-time practice tests. Use official materials. Get used to the pressure.
Essential preparation. Linked to that is poor time allocation across the whole test.
Yeah, getting bogged down in one tough reading passage and running out of time for the rest.
We're spending 30 minutes on writing task 1 and only 30 on task 2. Bad strategy.
You need a plan for how you'll roughly divide your time and try to stick to it. Be disciplined across all modules.
And the final general mistake, not reviewing your work.
Leaving early or just sitting there when time isn't up yet.
Use every last second. Go back over your answers in listening and reading. Check spelling, grammar, silly mistakes. Proofread your writing tasks. Look for errors, awkward phrasing.
Those few minutes of checking can catch errors and bump up your score. Never waste review time. Definitely not. So let's try and pull this all together. What are the big takeaways?
Oh, well, getting that band 8 or 9, even if your English is strong, it's really about understanding the test, its format, its quirks.
And practice needs to be targeted. Focus on your weak spots. Simulate exam conditions regularly.
Use a good range of vocabulary and grammar, but keep it clear. Be concise, but also develop your points properly, especially in writing and speaking.
And to maybe think about our 3P strategy. Plan, practice, polish.
Good one. Plan your answers, especially for writing and speaking part 2. Practice consistently under timed conditions. And polish your work review, check for errors, refine.
Plan, practice, polish. Simple but effective.
And if people want more resources.
All lots out there. The official Cambridge IELTS practice books are gold standard. IELTS Liz on YouTube is fantastic. The British Council has a good prep app. And there are great resources focusing specifically on, say, IELTS Advantage writing techniques.
Loads to explore. So the final thought perhaps is, remember, the IELTS tests how you perform under pressure just as much as it tests your English level.
True. It's about bringing it all together on the day.
Exactly. And knowing these common mistakes, being aware of these pitfalls, and actively working to avoid them through smart practice, that's what can really push you over the line to that band 8 or higher.
So maybe take a moment after this to think. Which of these potential traps feel most relevant to my preparation? Where do I need to focus? Welcome to the deep dive. So, you're in that final 30-day stretch, really aiming to nail the IELTS listening test.
Yeah, targeting those high band scores, 7, 8, maybe even a 9. That's the goal for a lot of serious learners.
Exactly. And we've got this pretty detailed 30-day plan someone shared. We're going to break it down. Think of this as your focused strategy session.
Right. And looking at this plan, it's clear it's not just, endless practice tests. It's more holistic than that.
Totally. It covers daily activities, vocabulary, accents, mock tests, even conversation practice. It's quite comprehensive.
So our mission today basically is to pull out the really impactful stuff from this plan.
Yep. Give you a head start, some actionable steps you can use right now, no matter where you are in your prep. Sound good?
Sounds great. Let's dive in. Week 1 seems to be all about building strong foundations.
It is. The plan stresses understanding the test structure first. You got to know the battlefield, right?
Makes sense. So what does that involve? 4 parts.
Exactly. Part 1, that's usually your everyday social chat. 2 people.
Okay, like booking a hotel or something?
Could be, yeah. Then part 2 is a monologue. Think like a tour guide giving info, or maybe someone explaining something non-academic.
Right, one person speaking.
Then part 3 gets academic. It's usually a discussion, maybe 2 or 3 students, or a student and tutor talking about research or assignments.
More complex.
And finally, part 4 is a full academic lecture. Just one speaker going in depth on a topic.
Got it. So 4 distinct sections with different contexts.
And different question types, too. That's the other part of the foundation.
Yeah, yes. What kind of questions are we talking about?
Well, you got your standard multiple choice, obviously.
Sure.
Then form completion, table completion. Filling in gaps, basically. Names, dates, numbers.
Okay.
Sentence completion, summary completion, notes, diagrams. Different ways of pulling out and organizing information.
Right, requires careful listening for specifics.
And matching tasks. Linking ideas or speakers to options.
So knowing these question types is key from the start.
Definitely. And the very first task this plan suggests, take a full test. It mentions Cambridge IELTS 16 as a good source.
Okay, jump right in. But the crucial part isn't just taking it, is it?
No, not at all. It's the analysis afterwards. Digging into your mistakes. Why did you get it wrong?
Self-assessment, finding your weak spots from day one.
Exactly. Was it a specific accent? A certain question type, like maps? Understanding those patterns is the real gold here. It tells you where to focus your energy.
Right. And the plan moves quickly into accuracy, focusing on details like names, numbers, addresses. Why is that so vital?
Because, honestly, a lot of questions hinge on catching those small bits of information correctly. Spelling counts, too.
Good point.
Plus, building concentration for the full 30 minutes. It's an endurance test in a way.
So how does the plan suggest improving that? I see BBC Learning English, TED Talks.
Yeah, the idea is to listen without subtitles first. Really challenge yourself.
Okay.
Then listen again with the subtitles and compare. See where you misheard or misunderstood.
I see. Pinpointing the errors. And taking notes while listening.
Yeah, keeps you actively engaged, helps reinforce it.
Makes sense. Week 1 also hits vocabulary, but in a specific way, right? Topic-based.
Yep, things like travel, health, environment, education, common IELTS themes.
And the task is?
Create your own vocabulary list for each topic. Word, definition, and crucially, an example sentence.
So context is key, not just memorizing lists.
Exactly. Much more effective for actually remembering and using the words.
Okay, now accents. That's a big one for many people. The plan mentions the main ones: British, Australian, Canadian, American.
Right. And getting familiar is crucial. You don't want to be thrown off guard on test day.
So how do you practice that?
Immerse yourself. The plan suggests the British Council site for British English. Podcasts from different countries are great too.
Specific recommendations.
Yeah, it mentions Australian ABC News and CBC podcasts for Australian and Canadian flavors.
Good tips. And what should you listen for?
The differences. Pronunciation, especially vowels, intonation patterns. Note them down. Actively listen for what makes them distinct.
Okay, conscious listening. Then there's dictation and transcription. Day 5, I think. Seems intensive.
It can be, but it's super effective. You listen to short clips, lo.org, TED-Ed, IELTS Liz samples are suggested, and write down exactly what you hear, word for word.
What's the main benefit there? Spelling?
Spelling accuracy, definitely, but also just processing speed. It really trains your ear to catch everything in real time.
I can see that. Forces close attention.
The note-taking practice, especially for parts 3 and 4. The plan mentions mind mapping or Cornell notes.
Why those methods specifically?
They help you grab the key info without trying to write everything. Mind maps are visual, good for connections. Cornell notes give structure, main points, details, summary.
And the key is keywords, not full sentences.
Absolutely. You'll fall behind if you try to write full sentences. Keywords and short phrases are the way to go.
Gotcha. And week 1 wraps up how?
Another full official test on day 7. Followed by analysis, identifying improvement areas, and noting down maybe 10 new vocabulary words you encountered.
So it's a cycle. Learn, test, analyze, refine.
Exactly. Builds that foundation and awareness for the weeks ahead. All right, let's move into week 2 then. The focus shifts here, right? Sharpening the skills.
Yeah, the goals are more about building topic awareness, getting better at actually answering the questions accurately, and learning to spot signal words.
Signal words, like however or firstly.
Exactly those, words that guide the listener. But first, day 8 zooms in on part 1, those everyday chats.
With a focus on form completion and spelling.
Right, because that's often where you need to write down names, addresses, phone numbers, details where spelling has to be perfect.
Makes sense. Practice with shop or hotel scenarios, writing down specifics, very practical.
Then day 9 moves to part 2, the monologues, things like map labeling, matching info.
Maps. Following directions. Tricky sometimes.
Definitely. The plan suggests Cambridge tests again, but also listening to things like museum tour recordings on YouTube.
Oh, that's a clever idea for map practice. They describe layouts, locations.
Precisely. It directly mimics the skill needed.
Day 10 circles back to vocabulary, but with a twist. Synonyms and paraphrasing. Why is that so critical?
Because IELTS loves paraphrasing. You'll hear one thing, but the question will use different words for the same idea.
So you need to recognize that connection.
Absolutely. The activity suggested is listen, pause, write down key phrases, then actively brainstorm synonyms for them.
Like hearing cost of living went up, and the question asks about rise in expenses.
Exactly that kind of thing. You need to be ready for it.
Okay. Part 3, the group discussions. Multiple speakers can be confusing. Day 11 tackles this.
Yeah, the key here is focusing on tone, opinion, agreement, disagreement, who thinks what.
How do you practice that specific skill?
Watching group debates, maybe listening to podcast panels. Try to track who supports which idea. Listen for how they say things, not just what. Tone gives clues. And those little phrases like, I agree, or, I'm not so sure.
Exactly. Cues for agreement or disagreement?
Then part 4, the academic lectures on day 12. Identifying structure.
Yes. Intro, main points, details, conclusion. Understanding the flow.
Yeah.
And spotting those signal words we mentioned earlier.
Like, firstly, in addition, however, to sum up.
Precisely. They're like signposts. They tell you what's coming next. A new point, a contrast, a conclusion. Helps you follow the logic.
Recommended practice. TED Talks, actual IELTS recordings.
Yep, those are ideal for this.
Day 13 hits sentence completion and short answers. The focus is on being concise, right? 1 to 3 words usually.
And accurate. Spelling, grammar got to be right. Extracting specific facts.
Okay. And week 2 wraps up with another test on day 14, but with a different tactic. A 2-pass approach.
Yeah, this is interesting. First pass, you just try to answer the questions normally.
Second pass, you listen again, but this time you're actively analyzing the language. Looking for paraphrasing, identifying synonyms used.
So a deeper dive into how the information is presented.
Exactly. It really reinforces that skill of recognizing different ways of saying the same thing. Very valuable.
Okay, week 3 feels like we're moving into advanced practice now, refining things.
That's the idea. Minimizing mistakes, fine-tuning strategies, and building test stamina.
Right, endurance. Day 15 kicks off with timed practice sessions, simulating the real deal.
Yeah, and crucially, minimizing distractions and using the official answer sheet, getting used to transferring answers under pressure.
Conditioning yourself. Makes sense. Day 16 is back to vocab, but focusing on high-frequency academic words.
Yeah, about 50 topic-specific ones. And again, not just learning definitions, writing your own sentences. Using flashcard tools like Quizlet or Anki for active recall.
Active learning, not passive.
Much more effective. Then day 17 has this listen plus speak plus summarize activity using TED Talks or podcasts.
How does that work?
You listen, then immediately try to give a 2-minute spoken summary without looking at notes.
Oh, wow. That sounds challenging but useful.
It really is. Builds listening memory, comprehension, and speaking fluency all at once, forces you to process and retain.
I like that. Day 18 addresses the psychological side test, anxiety, focus.
Yeah.
Mindfulness or breathing exercises.
Yeah, practicing ways to stay calm and focused for the whole 30+ minutes. It's often overlooked, but can make a real difference. Training your mind like a muscle.
Absolutely. Then day 19 is error log day. This sounds really important.
I'd be so too. You go back through all your past mistakes from practice tests.
And log them, like in a spreadsheet.
Exactly. Categorize them. Question type, topic, what the mistake was, and importantly, what the correct strategy should have been.
That forces you to really think about why you made the error. Metacognition.
Precisely. You spot patterns, target weaknesses much more effectively. It's powerful stuff.
Day 20 introduces rapid response training. Short clips, like 20-30 seconds.
Yeah, and the goal is just to write the main gist in 1 or 2 sentences. Quickly grasp the core message.
Training you to filter information quickly.
Exactly. Essential skill. And week 3 finishes with another full mock test on day 21. Focus on speed, accuracy, real conditions.
Followed by reviewing all the incorrect answers again. Understanding the why.
That consistent cycle. Simulate, analyze, adjust. That's how you improve.
Okay, week 4. The final stretch. Real-world prep, final boost.
Yeah, refining timing, accuracy, boosting confidence, getting totally test ready.
Day 22 is strategy day. Revisiting everything.
Pretty much. Go over your strategies for each part. The plan suggests making a little cheat sheet key formats, traps to avoid, time tips.
A quick reference guide for the final days. Good idea.
Then day 23, an accent mix test. deliberately mixing British, Australian, Canadian, American accents in one test.
Testing that accent flexibility you've been building.
Exactly. Can you handle the mix under pressure?
Day 24 is a mental endurance challenge, listening to 3 sections back to back.
Yeah, it's about practicing, staying focused for that extended period, fighting off mental fatigue, just like in the real test.
Building that mental muscle. Day 25 has the echo technique, speaking-listening integration. How does echoing help listening?
When you immediately repeat what you hear sentence by sentence, it forces active processing. It helps pronunciation, sure, but it really locks in comprehension because you have to understand it to repeat it accurately.
Interesting. Strengthens that connection.
Definitely. Day 26 is a sentence summary challenge. Listen to a 5-minute clip, then write a 100-word summary using advanced vocab. Yep. Combines listening, synthesis skills, and active use of the vocabulary you've learned. Puts it all together.
Day 27, final time management drill. Practicing each part under time pressure, no pausing or rewinding.
Crucial. Gotta get used to the real constraints. No second chances with the audio.
Day 28, vocabulary recheck. Reviewing all the lists and creating your own IELTS-style questions using those words.
Yeah, that active application really cements the learning, makes you think like the test setter.
And day 29 is the big one, the final mock test. Full test, headphones, timer, answer sheet, no pauses.
The ultimate dress rehearsal, as close to the real thing as possible.
And finally, day 30, relax, review, reassure.
Yes. Light listening only, maybe a movie or music. Quick review of your strategy cheat sheet. Prioritize sleep and health. Don't cram.
Good advice. Be rested and confident. Now, the plan also had a bonus section on advanced vocabulary. Words like allocate, inevitable, tentative, reinforce in the long run.
Right, with definitions and examples. Why are words like these important?
Well, they often pop up in parts 3 and 4, the academic sections. Understanding them can really make a difference in comprehending those more complex discussions and lectures.
So recognizing them is key for those higher level sections.
Definitely. And there was another bonus, a practice conversation. University course registration.
Yeah, with the dialogue and comprehension questions. How does that help?
It's perfect practice for part 1, that everyday transactional conversation style.
Let's quickly run through it. Speaker A wants to register for psychology.
Right. Speaker B asks for the student ID.
Which is 789214.
Yep. Then B offers Monday, Thursday at 10 a.m.
But Thursday clashes for student A.
So B offers an alternative, Tuesday, Friday at 2 p.m.
And student A says, perfect, I'll go with that.
Exactly. And the questions check. What course? Psychology. ID 789214. Why not Thursday? Clash. Alternative. Two's free 2 p.m. Final choice. Two's free schedule.
See, practicing that kind of exchange directly trains you to pick out and remember those key details. Names, numbers, times, reasons, decisions, skills you absolutely need for part 1.
So looking back at this whole 30-day plan, it's incredibly structured. It's really about active work, not just passive listening.
Absolutely. Analysis, strategy, targeted practice across everything: structure, questions, accents, vocab, stamina.
It really drives home that this final month isn't just cramming, it's strategic refinement.
Finding weaknesses, building endurance, making sure practice is intentional.
So here's something for you, the listener, to think about. Reflecting on everything we've just unpacked from this plan.
What specific part, what technique really jumps out at you for your current preparation stage? Is it the error logging, the accent practice, the 2-pass listening?
And maybe more importantly, how can you take just one new thing from this discussion and start using it, like today or tomorrow?
Yeah, think beyond just doing more mock tests. Which underlying skill or targeted method could give you that edge? What's the one small change you can make right now for a noticeable improvement? Food for thought.